Good afternoon, and I'm sure you've been with us for the last 1, 2, 3 hours, right? So this is hour 4, State of Black Health, and we are here at blackdoctor.org. We're trying to make sure that we start this new year off right. It's MLK Day. Let's live long and prosper, right? And so today we have had panels about mental health. We've talked about your skin and your hair. And the last panel was about pain and trauma, which we all have experienced in some way, shape, or form. This panel right here is very near and dear to my heart because I am a member of this, what do you call it? Thing, I guess, issue. So there's a double-edged sword as we continue to age. Aging parents. We want our parents to live a long life, but there may be a time where they are unable to completely care for themselves. And we have to either supplement care or take it over completely. So we are going to talk to two of my colleagues here who have treated the patients, or like one of my colleagues, she also was a caregiver and is a caregiver like I am. So if you have questions, please post them in the chat. Also, do me a huge favor, let us know exactly where you're tuning in from. And I am hosting and producing a little here. So if you see my eyes going different places, that's why, just so you guys know. I have a few things going. But please, please, please share the broadcast, because I guarantee if you have living parents and you are 30 something, it's coming to you quickly. If you have living parents and you're 40 something, you might already be there. And if you are under that age, then this could be you one day. And I have said to more people than not, I have said they don't teach us this in high school, and they should, because this is something, it's a skill that I didn't learn in medical school and I didn't learn anywhere before that. So let's get going. Here are my guests. Hello, Dr. Nicole Rochester, who has a fabulous company that helps with caregiving that she will tell us about later. And Dr. Eric Griggs, who is, I guess, apparently the doctor in Louisiana.
Mm. Yeah, Ellis has real jokes. Yes, real jokes.
Hey, Dr. Renee.
Hey, thank you so
Hey,
much, you
Dr.
guys,
D.
for joining us. So let's start right away. What are some of the challenges presented when trying to care for our aging parents? So I will start with my fabulous friend, Dr. Nicole.
Oh boy. Well, I'll do a brief introduction. I'm
Yes.
Nicole Rochester. As you stated, I'm a pediatrician by training, a former caregiver to my late father. And that caregiving experience was so informative and traumatic that I actually left clinical medicine about 5.5 years ago to start my own health advocacy and consulting company, Your GPS Doc, where, as Dr. Renee stated, we help family caregivers understand and navigate the complicated healthcare system. And so your question was, I'm sorry, repeat your question, Dr. Renee. I know it was
What are some
broad.
of
I'm
the
like,
challenges?
the challenges. Yeah. There's
Yes.
there are
Presented
so
when
many
trying to
challenges.
care for them.
I think there's a lot. So I'll give a couple and I'll pass the mic. One of the main challenges is just dealing with that transition of going from being the child to, I'm not going to say the parent, because I think that's a little bit disrespectful when we say like we become our parents, but the reality is that role reversal in being kind of the child in the relationship, even as an adult, and then having to shift and oversee your parents' medical care, oversee maybe their expenses, their finances, their housing. It's a really big challenge, and I would say some parents take that transition better than others. So my dad, surprisingly, maybe was like very amenable to the solutions that my older sisters and I presented when we became his caregivers. But most of the people that I know, when they were going through that same transition, there was a lot of conflict. And so I know that I was very blessed in that respect. So one of the challenges is just managing that transition in that relationship. How do you maintain that respect that you owe your parents, while also sometimes having to like step in and be like, no, like we're going to do it this way, and maintaining that balance while also allowing them to keep their dignity. I think that's a huge challenge. Another challenge that I was intimately involved in as the doctor in the family is navigating the healthcare system for our aging parents, and recognizing that for many reasons, they often need an extra voice It may be that they have suffered some type of acute event like a stroke, or they may be suffering from dementia, in which case they're not able to really relay their medical history accurately, or they may not be able to really show up as their full selves. And so we, as the adult children, may have to be their voice, similar to those of us who have kids. When they're little, you're the one telling the doctor when the symptoms started and how long it's been going on. I found myself having to do that for my dad because of his dementia and just stress from all of his chronic health conditions. And that is a whole nother challenge that we'll probably talk a little bit more about. So I'll stop there.
Yeah. Dr. Griggs, so please give us your intro as well, and then I'm going to ask you something in relation to that.
So my name is Dr. Eric Griggs. I am the Assistant Vice President for Community Health Affairs for Access Health Louisiana, which is an FQHC, a series of affordable primary care clinics, the largest in the state of Louisiana. We have 50 patients and 50,000 patients in 50 clinics. Also, another hat that I wear is the health educator for the last 10 years for the local Fox News. I'm on TV every day, especially intensely during COVID. And I'm actually in Lafayette, about 2 hours away, working a community event for the city, for Martin Luther King Day. So I go where I'm asked to visit. I just wanted, before you ask a question, one of the biggest things, the challenges, and I want us to talk about it, is the actual head crack, right? And I mean the head crack of us. Watching your parents for the first time and seeing them as aged, as doctors, we go off to school. If you indeed did leave town, you'd only see your parents doing, I grew up with my grandparents, so I've been through this, and now I'm going through it again. Now with my mom. Just met my dad, which is cool. He's still with it. They're in their 70s, but just going home and all of a sudden, watching my grandparents be old. I don't know what another way to describe it at the time. I'm like, you've aged, and just it seemed like it was just yesterday that they were as with it as we were. So it's just dealing with the sadness and coping mentally. How do you cope, and most importantly, how do we care for each other as caregivers? Because you feel lost, because you hold it in, right? It's your parents, you hold it to yourself. You don't tell anybody. You just walk around sad, and finally, when you open up, and we have panels like this, hosted by amazing people with amazing energy, with amazing stories, it doesn't feel so bad.
And it's funny you say that, because I tell people I'm on the verge of tears all the time. They just don't come out. Because my dad, I'm unmarried, and my dad is my guy. Like, that's, yes, I live in another state usually, but if something breaks down, that's who I'm calling. Yep. That's who's going to rescue me. I mean, I promise you, I live in another state. I would call him when I got to the dealership and have them tell him what's wrong with the car and get his permission to pay them, mind you, my own money, pay them to fix my car. Okay?
Yeah.
So this is my guy, and my guy is down, and it is just awful to watch. It's awful. And somebody actually asked me about it the other day, like, Renee, but you're watching your dad. And I was like, I know, but I can't focus on that. Like, I got to make sure this and this and this and this, just like he's on God only knows how much medicine a month. And I'm the one that has to put it in there. And at the end of the month, every month, I'm like, oh my God, this is so stressful. So I'm like, if I mess this up, what am I about to do?
Right.
So it's awful. Right. But I was going to ask you, Dr. Griggs, because my dad, he does, he's obviously, he can talk to us and stuff, but his memory is not as good. And so the doctors often end up talking to us, but he's sitting right there, and the man hears better than anybody in this entire house. He probably
always has. He got daddy ears. He got them daddy ears. What'd you say?
Upstairs. I'm telling you, he can hear everything. So literally, he gets mad at us because he's like, you can ask me. Right. So how do you handle that, Dr. Griggs? Because I know that you deal in the community.
So we had to deal with that. I can honestly tell you I had to deal with that with my grandmother. My grandmother started losing her vision. And she really, I think, people ask, my grandmother was 90 when she passed away. And I say, what happened? She passed away of obstinance. I'm like, what do you mean? She was stubborn. She got tired of people talking to her. Baby, I can't see. I can hear you. I ain't stupid. What kind of fool? You know what? You need to brush your teeth if you're going to be all up in somebody's face like that. Letting you know that she's perfectly with it. She just can't see. Even though she could see what she wanted to see. If you call yourself mouthing something to somebody. I read your I don't say it again. Yeah? Like, Mom. So so what happens is the toughest thing is you have to accept things for where they are. But what happens is it's the amount of, just like they would demand the amount of respect. Like you say, you call your daddy all the time. Let something happen to third grade Dr. Renee at school. The first person at the school is daddy knew it. You will treat her with respect. No, she's standing here. Talk to her. You have to take that same approach. You pour back into them and pour for them what they poured for you without judgment. I mean, if you think about all the lumps and bumps and weird, I would bring home all kind of weird animals from the woods, talking about this a pet, asking all them crazy. Even though I grew up with my grandmother, I was, Mom, what is this? What is that bump? I don't know what this is. I don't know. Sit down, you crazy. The thing is, the same patience that they have with us. You can only imagine what they were going through as they were raising us as children. And we don't want to view them, they're not children. So you want to make sure that everyone treats them with the level of respect. Talk to them first, and then tell us what's going on. Include he or she in the conversation.
Yeah. So we have some therapists that do that and others that are like, and I'm like, you guys, he can answer. Look, I'll sit behind him and be like, no.
I mean, it's an interesting question, Dr. Renee, because I experienced the exact opposite, where I was often ignored by healthcare providers as my dad's caregiver until they found out that I was a doctor.
And see, I was just about to say, but you don't understand. This is my uniform.
Man, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, I think a lot of families
about everything. They know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but did they have you run your entire resume? Did they have you run your entire resume? No, oh, really? Where'd you go to school? So where's the train? Well,
I've experienced that as well. But I think it's a double-edged sword. I think some healthcare professionals will defer to the caregiver, especially if they think or know that the patient is going to take longer, right? Yeah. Or if they think that they have some type of cognitive deficit. But then on the other end, many healthcare professionals will only talk to the patient and not want to talk to the caregiver, because in their mind, that's yet another person that I have to talk to. That's more time in the office. That's lengthening this visit. So I've seen it both ways.
Well, the one thing that I tell people is you realize that you can fire your doctor. If you don't like them, fire them.
Yep.
If this don't work, if this ain't working, break up. It's a cool breakup. You can ghost. You can even ghost, and it's cool.
Yeah.
I'm out. This ain't working.
Right. So having aging parents who may have needs is not unique to Black people, of course not. However, what are some of the cultural norms that make caring for aging parents for Black people different? So I think you touched on one, Nicole, because you're right. Sometimes they don't listen to us, but sometimes they don't listen to us even when we say, well, I am a doctor. And so I need you to explain this because I do understand. So tell me exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
So what are some others?
Is that for anyone or?
Yeah, anyone. Go ahead.
Yeah, in my family, the living room was reserved for the hospital bed if we need it. We typically don't put people in homes. We don't in our family. We'll move the hospital bed. We'll do whatever we can that person stays at home. And there's a benefit to it for the patient, of course, our family members, of course, but also, and I know we'll get to it later, is the kids get to be a part of the process as long as they can, because it moves from the living room to the back bedroom or one or the other, as things can possibly get more concerning. But yeah, one thing is we try to, what I know in our community is we try to keep them as a part of our units as much as possible.
I would definitely agree with that. And because I work a lot with family caregivers, many of whom are Black, I will say that is a positive trait, but it can also come back to bite you because we do. I mean, it's a wonderful thing that in the Black community, we have a tendency to want to care for our own. And sometimes there are situations where that's just really not feasible. And I think more often than not in the Black community, there's a high degree of guilt around having to employ professional caregivers, because we've heard throughout our lives, like, you don't put our family members in a home, and so when it's time to possibly consider some of those options, or even having someone come into the home, there's a lot of secrecy. Let's just be real. In the Black family, we don't want people up in our houses. And so a lot of times our family members are not open to having a professional caregiver come in and help out. And that can cause a lot of wear and tear physically, emotionally on the caregiver. So I'm often helping family caregivers get past those barriers and that emotional guilt so that they can get the help that they need. Because sometimes we just need help. Sometimes we
Now, do you
cannot do it
have like,
ourselves.
do you have something, either one of you, that is like, okay, if this and this and this happens, then you need to definitely put them in a home, in some place because it's not safe for you or whatever. Do you have any
Well,
information? Somebody asked me about this the other day, and I was like, I don't know.
so strangely enough, there are resources and y'all, I dare both of y'all not to laugh at me saying this, but it's true. AARP has a lot of resources
They
to help
do.
the caregivers. You brought up guilt. I don't know if it's ever happened to you, but you hear a lot. People sitting in the driveway or sitting in their car, not they just want to break, and it's a guilt thing, because we do keep our people with us in our house, and it just sometimes after the aches and pains of the day, you just want to go de-stress for a minute, but you have to go and turn on another hat, put on
Yep.
another hat, and especially for those that have kids that are in the house as well. So it's a lot of stress. But the biggest thing that I find that's needed is like a support group or a place where people can do what we're talking about now, and just kind of vent, but supportively try to help each other with resources and bounce ideas off to help people know that, it is okay. You are human. And, we're talking as three medically trained professionals, and it's rough on us.
Yep.
There's the side that people don't agree with, but I tell people I was Eric first before I was anybody's doctor. So you forget all that stuff when it's your dad, your mom, your grandma, the cortisol kicks in and you don't remember anything. You don't want to know anything. You just want them to be there like they always have.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
And to go back to your question about like when do you know or when may you need help? I think one thing is physically. So we were having an offline conversation, Dr. Renee. I hope you don't mind, where Dr. Renee shared that she's been lifting her dad, who's a bigger man. And so sometimes physically, depending on your body stature, depending on your underlying health conditions as a caregiver, you may not physically be able to care for your loved one alone, especially if they have mobility issues and they're needing help getting in and out of bed, getting on and off the toilet, helping with bathing and all of those things. So that's one, is like physically, you just may not be able to do it. Also, particularly with like end stage dementia, if you have a family member who literally requires a 24/7 awake caregiver because maybe they are prone to hurting themselves or leaving the home, wandering, those types of things, nobody can stay awake 24/7. And so I'm not saying it has to be a professional, but it may be your cousin, it may be your sibling, it may be somebody from your church. But at some point, most of us in that caregiving journey are going to need help from someone else.
Gotcha. That's fair. That's fair. Many Black families do not talk about health or health conditions, which we talk here about Black Doctor, how important it is. How can a lack of knowledge about what an aging parent is going through impact the ability to properly care for them?
So a lack of knowledge, of course, it's kind of, if you don't talk about it and you're forced to deal with it, it's going to be a rough road because no matter what, it's coming at some point. Like it might not be an intense, but our parents are going to age, and there will come a time where you might have to walk a little slower with them. And that's another thing, when you're used to walking and taking your parents different places. I can remember having to literally pick my grandmother up like a baby and put her in the car. And of course, she was like, "If you don't put me down, boy, I'm gonna bust you in the back of the head. What's wrong with you? I can walk. What kind of fool mess is this? If y'all can't wait a little bit, then leave me standing where I am." Da, da, da. And then, of course, when I got her in the car, she was like, "Thank you, baby." So the sooner you reach out, the more you can get resources to help circle the wagons to help, not just to help them, to help you. It's a lot. How many times have you had a conversation with your girlfriend or one of your friends or anybody, a colleague, and then all of a sudden it turns into this magic conversation that you needed, and like the world is off you because you've been walking around on the verge of tears all day and thinking you're alone, and you find out they're going through the same thing, and then they offer solutions. things, or again, offering resources that you didn't know about. But it's I always tell people that, whenever there's a sick child in the house is sick. When there's a sick or aging parent, especially if it's a matriarch or a patriarch in the family, the entire family tree feels it. So don't be shy to ask for help.
Agree. Yeah, we have to end this secrecy in the Black family for so many reasons. And when we don't know, like Dr. Griggs said, if you can't help what you don't know, and so many of the health conditions that our aging parents face they can be better treated proactively, or at least at the beginning of the journey. And so, when you have parents that hide from you that they're starting to fall, as an example, or that,
Right.
Their eyesight is declining, or their hearing is declining, or they're having chest pain, or any of these things, or they're losing feeling in their feet, like all of these things, when they hide that, and then by the time you find out they're sitting in an emergency department somewhere about to be admitted to the hospital, there are things that often, you could have intervened as a caregiver a little bit sooner. And then also those things impact us. Like, we need to know what you all have, the aging parents, so that we know how to care
What
for
to look out for.
ourselves.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's I just was telling somebody yesterday how it's so important for us to have those conversations, because some of like we were talking about cancer, some of these cancers are preventable.
Yes.
So while you're sitting there watching somebody die, you can make sure that you don't get it. And so, many people don't realize prostate cancer and colon cancer, if you have a first degree relative, so if your mother, father, sister, brother has it, you need to start getting tested 10 years before they were diagnosed. So if they were diagnosed at 40, you need to start getting tested at 30.
Yep.
So yes, that means you start having colonoscopies at 30 if it's colon cancer. Oh, well, but this is how you prevent these things. But if we don't talk about it, and someone's, Eric said his grandma, if his grandmother died and he never talked about it, doesn't know what she died from.
Yep.
You just walking around and have no idea.
That's true.
And I never finished that point. When I say she died of abstinence, it was for the exact reason. People were, her best friend had passed away, one was her cousin, one was Miss Grace down the street, one of my neighborhood grandmas. But it got to the point, it was just frustrating, and she didn't have an outlet anymore, and I don't think she wanted people pitying her, so she just stopped eating. Like, she stopped. Like, I can't tell you a physical reason that she passed away other than she just quit eating and drinking, and she was done. Like, I mean, now you talk about tough. Those are the tough conversations, and tough things to accept. I mean, you still have to accept your parents still, for the most part, have their own free will, and what's going to happen to them is going to happen to them, and there's very little you can do to reverse it. Like, you cry a lot alone if you don't open up,
Yeah,
true.
And I completely understand that can be very frustrating. We had a relative, and I was like, she was fine, but she had diabetes. She didn't take care of it, and she sat there and she died because she never took care of the stupid diabetes. And I was like, she could have lived a much longer life. And I was so frustrated and so mad, but I mean, it was nothing I could do.
Yeah, they make their own choices.
Exactly.
The thing, though, that you wonder about, like, the three of us are having this conversation, who are sharing experiences. I don't think that happens enough, because everyone that I talk to that talks to me, especially when they hit their 40s, for whatever reason, I mean, that's the age, right? You have kids, and then you start to notice things with your parents, and they feel stressed out. But I don't think people talk about it enough. They'll hide it in isms, wanting to go get a drink all the time, or, you know what I mean? Or just trying to distract themselves, as opposed to, like, really just the catharsis and the healing is talking to other people that are in similar situations. You realize it's as bad as you think it is, it's not that bad, and you can focus on the gift that your parent is still here.
Right.
And does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense.
That's what I say 24/7. I was like, because honestly, in the last few months, I've had several friends that have lost their mothers. I'm just like, what? And unexpected, like, just poof. Here one day, gone the next. And I was like, okay, for all that I am going through, he's here. Because if he wasn't, I'd be very upset and very miserable. So he's here. And even though, his family is not in the same state, they, even out of state, have been very helpful. And then, siblings coming to visit, and then they call all the time. So it's, you know, they've seen exactly what we go through all day, every day. So they really have an appreciation. And like I said, they're really good about checking on us and calling, and they call him, which is very important because he needs to talk to I think he gets sick of us. Not to mention he's the only man in a house full of women. So his brothers, they call every day.
Say, bro, how you doing? You all right? You making it in there?
We definitely need to talk about it more. You're right. I mean, there in this country, I don't know about other countries, but in the US, caregiving is not normalized. Like if you think about childbearing or having a child, whether it's by adoption, that is a normal thing. When people talk about it, you have baby showers. People, I know I regularly, even now that my girls are grown, I would vent and still do vent to my friends and, girl, can you believe what she did? But like when it comes to caregiving, there's like this level of secrecy. There's like this shame, or I don't know, because I didn't talk about it. When I was caring for my dad, I was full-time clinical and academic pediatrician, had lots of amazing colleagues, and even shared an office with one of them. And do you all know, I mean, I don't even know, probably a full year in before they found out. It was almost like I was hiding it. And I didn't even realize at the time that I was hiding it. But to me, it was almost like it demonstrated like a weakness if I would have shared all the drama that I was going through. And then eventually it just got so bad that I had to, actually I broke down in a staff meeting. That's another story for another day. But I literally like broke down at a meeting. But yeah, like we need to normalize this, and there need to be employee resource groups around caregiving, and there need to be ministries and churches around caregiving, and there need to be just many more outlets, particularly in our community, where we can do just this, talk about it, vent about it, cry, laugh, all the things.
Have either of you ever forgotten that your parent is still a parent with a circle of friends, and you walk in a room and they're sitting there talking about you? Oh, here she comes. Now she think I'm crazy. I told her that, and who she thinks now? She think she the parent now? Boy, don't you know? I wish you would. Now look, he come in. He got his zipper undone. I ain't gonna tell him nothing. He's gonna yell at me. And you're sitting there like, I'm sitting right here. Hello. These are adults, not kids. Am I right?
You're always the kid. You are always the kid, no matter what.
Mm-hmm. She better go sit down somewhere talking to me like that. Check your tone. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am.
So, I mean, I am sandwiched in a sort of, but not really, because we don't have any children in the house. It's just all adults. But I know, Nicole, you had two daughters. I don't know how old they were at the time.
Yeah, they were initially, let me do the math. They were 10 and 15 when I initially became a caregiver to my dad, along with my sisters. And then when he passed away 3 years later, so they were 13 and 18. Did I do that math right? Yeah. Yep. So yeah, they were, it was very tough. It was difficult for them. It was difficult for me. That basically parenthood is hard enough, right? And so you're feeling torn between being there for your children, being there if you're married or partnered, to your spouse or your partner, being there for your job and your coworkers, and in my case, your patients, your medical students, all that, and then being there for your aging parent. And so, I mean, there's only 24 hours in a day. There's only one of you. And so you literally just felt like you're bouncing around, and, similar to this,
too, right?
Yeah. I mentioned spouse, partner. Okay. Yeah. So it's like all these people need you, not to mention, God forbid, if you want to have a social life, maybe you're in a sorority, maybe you go to church. So like trying to fit all those pieces of yourself into a 24-hour day is very difficult. And I will say, and I always shout out my two older sisters. Like for me, I did not do it alone. I don't know how caregivers do it alone. I know there are a lot of people out there that do it by themselves, but I had the help of two siblings. We all lived within about a 20-mile radius of my dad. So we were able to tag team a lot of things. And yet it was still hard as, you know what?
I have one sister, and we're in the same house. And it's no joke.
Yeah.
Well, Nicole, one of the things though too, now I'm gonna tell you what's funny is, your older parent, they'll get with your kids and talk about you too. They'll drag for you too. I know she always doing. He always telling me, you know what? Yeah, sneaking, run and get me. Look, run and get me. Run and go down the store and get me a Twix and a Snicker bar. And get whatever you want. Don't tell her. She always fussing at somebody. Enjoy those moments. Enjoy those family and those humane moments.
To your point, it did open up opportunities for some intergenerational conversation, some intergenerational fun. I'm thankful for those years because by me helping to care for my dad, my kids probably were exposed to my dad much more than they would have been. And so, they have lots of great memories of visiting and playing games and watching TV with my dad. So it's not all negative. It's not all negative.
I had to jump in because I had a question about the other side of that, and so I'm speaking kind of from my personal situation. It was my father was neglectful and negligent, and did not have a relationship with him growing up, and now he's starting to have health issues, and so I've got to intervene because I'm the one that lives closest. My sister lives out of the country. My other sister's in California, and he lives in Florida. So now I've got to be the one to go down and intervene, and it brings up all of those bad memories, right? So now you're trying to navigate being responsible for your parents' health and their well-being, while at the same time trying to reconcile the emotions and the lack of relationship. So I heard you, Dr. Renee, saying your dad was your guy, right? So there was like, you were going to Forrest Gump. And y'all remember that scene when Forrest Gump said your mom was sick and he jumped off the boat?
Yeah.
You were going to Forrest Gump. If somebody said something wrong with your dad, you Forrest Gumping. I'm struggling.
So
how does somebody deal? And we know that happens in our community. So how do you deal with that pull of responsibility of being the responsible child to try to take care of the parent, because my parents are divorced, he lives by himself, and that struggle of the emotional of like, I don't have a real emotional attachment to this person that you should. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Ellis, my personal situation when it comes to father. I just met my father in August, and when I tell you we're best friends, like we talk every day. And if something happens to him, I'm on my way. Like, what's up? The most meaningful years in someone's life, and when they need the most nurturing, you form bonds, is at the beginning of your life when you're born. You're a baby, and your nurturing years, 18, and some of us beyond. But then it's the end of life. Those years in the end, and I don't know how spiritual we want to be. I'm very spiritual. I just think that God doesn't have a sense of time. I want you to be close to your father. I want you to be close to this time. So it could be now is the time for you to have that bond that you always wanted to have. Maybe this is what it took to get you there. But the thing is, you want to do the right thing. And if you spend enough time, and especially if it's your parent, you'll see enough commonalities in personalities, senses of humor, and things like that, and you just nurture it and you have to deal with that moment and try to make today better than yesterday. You let a lot go. It wasn't, again, my situation wasn't such that my dad didn't know I existed. I didn't know he existed. So I had a lot of reasons to say, but I felt like I was connected because we bonded. First of all, Ellis knows we look almost kind of eerie. We look almost identical, but we have the same sense of humor, the same taste in food. We like the same. I'm not caring for him, but if something should happen, it's what I know I can bond on. And if you focus on that time, like with Nicole with her children, the intergenerational time, and you pour into each other, it gets easier and easier by the day, because whatever happened yesterday is history and it's gone. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And it's natural to have those feelings of anger and resentment. And that's when you got to have a partner, a girlfriend, or a favorite cousin that you can just vent to, and they can tell you you're wrong, to call you on your stuff. So you can get over it.
And I just want to add, I'm glad you normalized, like it is normal to have those feelings. And I think, your situation is almost like fairy tale with a happy ending.
Right.
But what I'm hearing Ellis say is like, there wasn't his dad. There's a lot of water under that bridge, right?
Yeah.
So I
That's a
think
lot of
we do
water.
have to acknowledge that, and I think that this comes up a lot in all families, but again, maybe more so in Black families where you have some of those issues of abandonment. And I think that the one thing I would say is maybe if you reframe how you think about your caregiving relationship as not an obligation, but a choice. And I know that you feel like you have to do it because all the reasons you stated, you're the only one here, he's divorced, your siblings are, but you don't have to do it. And I think when it comes to caregiving, we're making a choice to do it. And so part of it is taking back that ownership. Now, I'm not saying don't do it, but I mean, if you are deciding to do it, then really walk in that and be true to that. Also, therapy, y'all. Like, I think everybody needs a therapist, but caregivers especially need therapists. So if you're not already connected, I mean, these are the kind of things, because when you care for a family member, especially a parent, and especially a parent with whom there wasn't a great relationship, all of those feelings come up, even with siblings. I mean, those sibling relationships, those dynamics, all those things come back to the surface. A lot of times having a therapist just help you navigate that, because some days you're going to feel like a little 5-year-old boy, and that's normal. So I recommend, having some professional help along with that. But your dad is blessed that you're there for him in that way. And I agree with Eric. I think I can tell you, like, on the other end of it, you're not going to regret it on the other end of it.
Right.
It's tough.
So kind of a follow-up, Ellis. I just want to, what do you, like, how do you, we had to deal with my grandmother and my grandfather, actually. Days you talk about dementia, and there are days when their cognition isn't the best. What about mad day and bad day when it turns on you? Like your daddy says something just off the chain. You're like, wait, who are you talking? What? I don't have to do this. And then you'll get your stuff and leave. You're like, all right, I'm going back in. I'm gonna let that go. Is that natural? I wasn't the only one.
No, it was real, because I remember when he had to have a quadruple bypass, right? And so he had fallen, and they found him, and then they had to rush him to the hospital, and then he's alcoholic, so he was going through withdrawal so he's in ICU. He had to get the quadruple bypass. There was all that stuff going on, and my uncles was calling me, and it's and I'm getting these family pep talks. You got to be a man. You got to step up. You got to do that. I'm getting all this, and I'm like, but I still have, the reality is there's a lot, there's unresolved, right? There's a lot that's been unresolved because he hasn't acknowledged any of the things that he had done to me and my sisters, and to my mother. And so it was all of those things that you're like, okay, if we could just, and you wanted to say, if we could just deal with this.
The elephant in the room.
Yeah.
It would be easier to go in. But again, the caring side says, I got to put that, I got to deal with that, right? I could deal with that with my therapist, right? I call up a therapist, and we can work through daddy issues, on my dime and on my time. But when I'm in this capacity, and what you all were talking about earlier in terms of having some knowledge about healthcare, so I can speak for him when he is in the hospital, right? So I just went down there recently. He was in the hospital, and I'm like, but I'm noticing things, and I'm asking questions. There seems to be some cognitive functioning impairment. Should we get a neurological consult to come check it out to make sure? So I'm asking these questions, and they're like, you could kind of see them like, okay, well, he knows what he's talking about. I'm like, yeah. So then everything started moving, the ball started rolling, and then, not saying that they wouldn't have done anything, but I don't think it would have been. I think, especially when we're talking about hospitals, and let's keep 100, when they're in a hospital, their job is to stabilize you
and send you
get you out.
Right?
That's right.
They're not trying to get you well. They're trying to get you stable. And I had to tell my sisters that. That's it. Why are they discharging him? Because he's stable.
That's
medically
right.
stable. And they're not going to get sued. That's their number one priority. Stabilize the patient. Don't get sued. They're not worried about getting well. You're going to get well in your time. So we have to So there seems to be a separation sometimes where I feel like I'm having an out of body experience when I'm going through that, and I'm standing in the gap for him. I'm trying to be that person, and then when I go get my car and I'm coming back home, I'm like, I feel like a little kid again, because the anger, the frustration, all of that stuff comes back up, and it's like I can't let that impact me in the moment, because his life is dependent on me making decisions to save his life.
Mm-hmm.
But then you're like, wow, so it's a struggle, and I just, I don't know if there's a right way or wrong way to handle it. I think the way it's handling, the way I'm handling it right now, I feel like what's best for me is continue to try to be there for him, because I don't think anybody wants to feel completely alone. That is something that is completely detrimental, and I don't want him to feel that way, even though we're not calling each other up. And Dr. Chris, Eric, your relationship is phenomenal, and I'm so happy that you have that. But it's like, we're not calling each other up, hey man, did you see the game? We're not doing none of that stuff. However, just to know that if he knows that if he needs something, and if there's a crisis, at least I'm going to be there to sit by his bed, stand by his side, to make sure to let him know he's not alone. And that's
that's awesome.
Ellis, you're acknowledging. I mean, I think Nicole said it earlier. At least you're normalized acknowledging. I mean, if you have kids, there are days you wish they were your age and you could fight them. Like they just, woo, I'm just gonna leave. Go ahead now. And you have to acknowledge that. And it's when you get with other. It's easy for us to get together as parents and say, I wanted to take her, I wanted to take him, and just drop him off and just leave. And I understand, and it's easier for us to do that than it is when it's talking about our parents, because we haven't normalized this conversation.
That's right.
When you reach this stage, we need to get together about, man, taking care of my parents. What are you doing? Man, I'm just forgetful. He's mom's, and she calls me all the time. Oh, okay, baby, you at work? Yes. Oh, all right, mom. I work. Oh, I know you're busy, but okay. Oh, excuse me. I'm gonna call you back. And then right at day, I called you again. Yes.
Or they're hitting, right? Or they've got dementia and they start becoming aggressive, right? So those are those things that are real. Because I've got another friend that he's going through that with his parents, and so he has become a really good sounding board, because we're both going through it with our parents, and so that has been good. And you're right. I mean, because with kids, I mean, my daughter famously tells this story about when she was 4 years old and was talking me to death, and they're like, Dad, I was like, and I literally went into the garage and shut the door behind me just to get a break from her talking. Like, I was like, if she don't, and it's a 4-year-old little girl, and it was like she was so excited, she just wanted to share everything that was going on in her life. And I was like, 30 seconds for you to stop talking to me, when you can't say that to a 4-year-old. I don't want to crush it. So I just went in the garage and sat down.
And guess what? Sometimes caregivers need to go in that garage, go in that closet, go in that car, take a walk. Yes. Same thing.
I go to the grocery store.
See? You need an outlet.
My mother's
There's
like,
nothing
do you
wrong.
have a boyfriend at Myers?
Yep, sure do.
I said, no, I do not have a boyfriend.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, and his initials are POM. What? Peace of mind. Right?
Yes.
All four, right by the potato chips. Yeah.
Right. Look, I park really far from the door so I can get my steps, and then I get more steps inside, and then I get back in the car, and sometimes I sit in there for another 10 minutes before I drive home, and then I sit in the car when I get home. And I'll text them, say, I'm in the driveway if you need me.
Oh, you're good. At least you're letting them know you're in the driveway.
My mother never checks her phone, so my sister would see it, and she ain't gonna bother me. My sister, she works all day outside of the home. I'm the one here all day with them. And my sister said I have very good patience, which I'm telling you, the other day, I said to myself, for years, I don't do resolutions, but I would pray that I would be patient. Like I'd learn how to be patient. And I said, the Lord is teaching me now.
Be careful what you pray for.
I must be patient. Because she goes, no, Renee, you sit here with Dad all day. You have patience. I'm watching you. I was like, really? I didn't even know. So
pray for patience. He's gonna test your patience. That's what he's gonna do. He's gonna put things to test your patience. You better pray for discernment. That's all the prayer I pray for. Discernment.
Before we finish, you guys, I wanted to make sure I covered this. I was telling Dr. Nicole earlier, my father is a vet. If you have a parent that is a vet, please get them registered with the VA today. Don't worry about, oh, they have their own doctors. They don't need, don't worry about that. Get them registered now, because if you ever, God forbid, need help of any kind, because all this stuff is very expensive. It costs $200 round trip for my father to go to each doctor's appointment at one point in time, because we don't have a wheelchair accessible vehicle, and he couldn't transfer out of the wheelchair and into the car without a Hoyer lift. And if you don't know what a Hoyer lift is, look it up. And guess what? One day the Hoyer lift fell on top of me and my daddy, and the only person to save us was my mama. And let me tell you, she don't work out like I do. So I was petrified that the fire department was going to have to come save me and my daddy, because I didn't know how she was going to get it off of us. But you know how that adrenaline kicks in? The lady lifted it up and got it off of me, and I was able to get my daddy. I couldn't believe it. And we have one of those real Hoyer lifts that's actually, it's not some flimsy plastic, it's a metal. It was crazy. But so trust and believe. Get them registered with the VA. They only have to visit the VA doctor twice a year to have the benefits, and the benefits are crazy. Some people get transportation benefits, you get medication benefits, you can get, and I mean, some of the medications, depending on what you're dealing with, can be very expensive. So this can be very beneficial. They have every kind of specialist at the VA, and they get to see all of them at no cost for the most part, depending on what you've got going with the VA. Caregivers can come from the VA. Any kind of supplies you need, briefs, pads, all of that can come from the VA. My father received a wheelchair from the VA. They have all the therapies at the VA if you need PT and OT. So when I tell you, trust and believe, please get them registered with the VA today. It is not an easy process, which is why I'm saying do it while they're healthy, because it took us 2 years, and he's been sick 2 years. So this entire time we did not have anything until August of last year. So, and actually, I'm sorry, September of last year. So please, 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 that is my one nugget. Get with the VA.
Can I give a nugget too for a resource?
Yeah.
Okay. The Area Agency on Aging. Every state, city, county has one. Go to www.eldercare.acl.gov. That's eldercare.acl.gov. You can put your own zip code in, and you will find your local area agency on aging, so that if your parent is not a veteran, like Dr. Renee's dad, you can find out all of the other resources that are available. I get so many caregivers that want to know, for adult daycare programs and respite care and, caregivers, all the things. And, we've been saying all afternoon, you do not need to do this by yourself. In fact, I don't recommend that you do it by yourself. So go to your area agency on aging and find out all of the resources that are available for aging people in your jurisdiction.
So, and I'll throw in my nugget, and I'm going to see if y'all can keep a straight face, because I'm very serious, is aarp.org.
Love them.
I want you to go there for yourself, specifically for you as the caregiver. We all need support. We all need help. It's a blessing and a curse to be healthcare and have access and understanding and knowledge, extensive knowledge of the resources, but knowing the end result and knowing the disease prognosis and course of disease kind of makes it extra sad sometimes. But the support that you get if you're not in medicine, the support that you get as caregivers, they have so many resources. We have to talk to each other. And the other thing is that we need to transfer that level of communication. What you can do before you sign up for the other things, if your parents are healthy and if they're not, focus on the relationship. Focus on the moment. Exercising is great. Healthy foods, get checked, get fit, get moving. Ellis, get checked, get fit, get moving. At whatever level you're able to talk about health, to eat healthy, even if it's exercise, just walking around the house laughing is actually exercise. So if we focus on the relationship, you focus on the smiles, you'll have those long after our parents are no longer here. Those memories will last forever. I have an image of Ellis sitting in his garage is going to stick with me until I can't remember. I understand. I absolutely understand. I understand.
Well, we talk about it, and I got to jump, but I got to get ready for the next show. But we talk about it in church all the time, breaking generational curses, right? That's a theme that happens in church. So if you have one of those situations that is detrimental, that has been sketchy in the past, like mine, please understand that. But when you do these things, when you break that cycle, you are really not only you're breaking it for yourself, but you're breaking it for future generations. And that's why it was a point that I did come back inside from the garage, and I did talk about water.
Oh,
And
that was
we had a great relationship to this
good.
day, you know, and the same thing with my son. And it was like, and that was most important to me, because I can't go back in the past and change the past, but I can have an impact on the future. And so that's
Absolutely.
what we have to think about each and every day.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So yeah, I guess Dr. Renee, yeah, so guys, we got one more panel. This has been fantastic. So Dr. Rochester, thank you so much. What's the name of your organization again?
Your GPS Doc.
Your GPS Doc. Please go to that. We're going to put that in the comments here. Please go to yourgpsdoc.com. If you have any questions about caring for a parent, you know, it's a navigator. That's why it's GPS, right? Because it's a navigation system. It's really, and we don't want it to have to be hit or miss when there's somebody's already done the work for you. So go to your GPS Doc, get the information you need, get it ahead of time. Before you need it, it's always like preventative. Get it so you know what to do when the thing kicks in. You know, it's kind of like going to Lamaze classes before the baby's coming. So you know what to do, right? It's the same situation. Know what you're supposed to do before it happens, and not in the moment, because it is in the moment, panic can kick in, and we can have some serious issues, and you can miss some things when you're in crisis mode. So do it before you hit crisis mode. Get what you need to get done. Dr. Griggs. Check out Dr. Griggs every other Tuesday right here on blackdoctor.org. Get checked, get fit, get moving. We focus on all health, but we're really talking about y'all men. Get up off y'all behind. I mean, I love sports too, but pull away for 30 minutes, sit here and learn about how you can get healthier for you and your family, because we need the Black family to come together. And that's why we're doing this Healthy Black Family Summit here today on Martin Luther King holiday. Thank you again. Thank you all for joining us. And we will see y'all. So stick up. We got one more panel. We're talking about weight loss and diet tips from some fantastic panel. We're going to end the day on a high note. We're going to get y'all healthy for 2023 and beyond. So stick around. One more panel to go. Thank you so much. Healthy Family Summit. We'll see y'all next time.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you.